Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast.
I wonder if we could do that together.
Yes.
Let's try it. 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast. That's probably pretty annoying.
It was fun for us. Sorry if it wasn't good for you out there. So, welcome back to the podcast. We are excited to be sharing this awesome conversation with you.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to introduce you to this special guest that we have today. But before we do, we want to make sure that we remind you, if you haven't already, to leave us a review on iTunes. Give us those 5 stars and maybe write a comment about what your experience has been listening to the podcast. What you've got out of it. It's a great way for us to understand what is interesting, what you guys are excited about, how this whole thing is coming across out there.
Totally. Yeah. Or if it's just super annoying, but if it's super annoying, give us 5 stars and then just write, but you're kind of annoying. Like that would be better.
That would be cool because we do have a perfect score right now of 5 stars. And it's so fun. It's the only world in which we are perfect.
It's true. I'll have you know that I was perfect in Uber for a long time.
You were.
Until I started intermingling and giving people rides, I was a 5-star Uber rider, and then something happened, and I'm not sure what. Dropped me back to 4.89.
This was a big deal in our home.
It was a big deal.
Yeah. In fact, Adam sent a car for me the other night because I got a new phone and I didn't have my app set up yet, and he was texting me, "Be nice to the driver. Don't give me a bad score. I don't want my score to be dropped." And I was telling this sweet lady who drove me home, I'm like, I just have to let you know, please give my husband a 5-star because if his Uber score drops anymore, I'm going to be in big trouble.
It's really not that bad.
Yeah,
big trouble with me is not that big a deal.
No.
But
he
it's something
does
to
get
think
that
about.
One eyebrow up and he gives you that sideways
I'm working on that though. The face yoga method, I've almost got 2 eyebrows up.
Yes, it's true.
It's coming around.
So our guest today is, again, how I like to scour the internets and find interesting people that I'm already friends with, apparently.
Internet friends.
In some alternate universe. And this is, again, one of those people. And her name is Katie Bain. And she is a prolific writer for several different outlets, periodicals, etc., including a lot of work for LA Weekly over the last few years. And so I have been friends with her on Facebook, which we don't know how it happened, but that's just how it goes. And I've been seeing she covers interesting stories and locations, and she always has a great point of view. And every time I see a post from her, I just think, wow, she's an interesting person.
Yeah.
Doing interesting things.
And you're right.
And she
turns out, yeah.
Yeah. And she always has a way of writing that's very lovely and just a really nice demeanor. And every time she would scroll in my feed, I would think, I want to actually know her in person and not just in virtual reality.
Yeah. In VR.
Yes.
So we made it happen. She made the trip all the way from Silver Lake, showed up here, and we got to do an in-person interview, which is always so much better. It's so much better to be able to connect with folks and do it. And turns out we had all sorts of connections, as you'll listen to in the podcast. So this was a good one. I mean, I it's easy to say, this was my favorite podcast guest ever, because it just kind of continues to build.
Right.
But this was a fundamentally cool and fun conversation for us, and hopefully that translates for you guys.
Yeah, and just one of the things I want to plant the seed with you guys is sometimes we choose guests, and obviously we're a wellness, health and fitness. If you look at the category that we're in our podcast, it's health and fitness, I believe. But the reason that we have these guests that are kind of on the outline edges of health and wellness is because there's always something to glean from these people who are living interesting lives and who are living in an expanded universe, essentially. And that's what I really wanted to talk with Katie about, was how she went from, a young girl living in Wisconsin to this girl who's, getting paid to go hang out with rock stars and write articles and, really live an interesting life. And what can we as listeners glean from that and, kind of translate into our own lives and give us courage and confidence to say to ourselves, hey man, if this small town girl from Wisconsin can go and crush it out there in LA and make this dream happen, what am I capable of in my own life?
Right. Yeah, and her secret to success is pretty simple, totally attainable, and will generally make you a better person.
Yes.
So that one comes right at the end, so you're probably just going to have to listen all the way through.
Yes. So we really enjoyed this. You guys can find her. She gives all of her social and all of that good stuff of where you can find her, but Bain of Existence is her social media handle, which is really funny. And
clever.
Yeah, very clever. And she is definitely very clever, very sweet and intelligent, and just a great conversationalist.
Indeed.
Yes.
So without further ado, here's Katie. All right, we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We were just talking about how actually I was Facebook stalking you.
No shame.
No shame, yeah. No, actually our audience knows this is pretty much these days how I find people to come on the podcast is I just like randomly stumble across people on social media and they seem interesting to me. And I'm like, well, if they seem interesting to me in this 2-dimensional format, imagine how they'd be in 3D.
Oh my goodness. No pressure.
4D. Yeah, exactly.
But thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
totally.
You. Yeah.
So with that said, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from and just kind of get us like, the short version of where you are today. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So I am originally from just outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin, a little town called De Pere. So I grew up basically in the woods in Wisconsin, and I've lived in Los Angeles for the past 10 years.
Nice.
And so I've been here, this is my home now. Or I have 2 homes, it feels like.
Right.
But almost as soon as I moved to LA, I started writing mostly about music. And that's primarily what I do now. I'm a music journalist. Although I write about other things as well, travel and psychedelics and, just the things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So, I freelance all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think I'm starting to see a pattern. So music, travel, psychedelics. Like, how is it possible you guys are friends on Facebook? I think that the algorithm might be working.
When we look at our mutual friends, we'll know. We'll be like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's that time. It's lightning in a bottle.
Exactly. We were in that hut. Yeah. You passed me some cacao.
It's always a hut. Like, yes. That hut. No, I remember.
No, that's cool. So no wonder I found you interesting. It's all coming together. So the thing I want to really tease out of this and that I think is cool is that, I've seen you come across my feed and you're writing these interesting articles and you're going to these interesting experiences. And I wonder, like, in my mind, I'm always going back to, like, where was this little girl in Wisconsin? Like, when did this dream seed itself?
Yeah.
And what were the things that made you believe it was possible to go out and create this world for yourself?
Sure. Okay. Great question. Well, I always have just loved music. I got into music really early. My parents were both big music fans. So they were taking, I think I saw Journey when I was in utero. My mom was 8 months pregnant in the front row. And, it just permeated into my, DNA. So my parents took me to concerts growing up and music was always around. And it's just really, it made me, it's how I sort of processed my emotions and just understood and guided my life. And so, I followed that to a lot of places. Just when I got old enough to start going to shows on my own and going to music festivals and driving to other states to go to music festivals. And, I just was really in love with not only the music, but the scenes that I was finding and the people that I was meeting. And so, in Wisconsin, it was like a different world, right? Like Los Angeles and New York and the places in which these musicians existed, might as well have been the moon.
Right.
It was just, it was so foreign because I grew up, like I said, in a pretty small town. There were 20,000 people and it was surrounded by farmland and, a lot of hunting, fishing, football, and that stuff is all great. And, it just didn't have anything to do with the worlds that I was really interested in. So I would ride my bike to the library and check out Rolling Stone and just really kind of not even study, just got into bands and, the music and the people and the mythology of it. And so, let's see, was that part of the question?
Yeah. It's funny because in my mind, so I have this vision, like, so we're just meeting for the first time today, but in my mind, I've pictured you a few times in my life when I see your stories and I'm like, I feel like she was like, I don't know, maybe 13 when the movie Almost Famous came out.
You're exactly right. I'm so glad you said that, because that movie to me was huge. It was monumental. I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, okay.
And I went to see it with my sophomore year boyfriend, and he didn't like it. And I broke up with him. I was like, I can't be with someone who like isn't profoundly moved by this film.
I'm telling you,
that's what I want my life to be like.
I saw the reel in my head, and I was like, I feel like this was like a pivotal moment for her. And I don't even know her, but I was just seeing this
That's
reel,
incredible.
and I was like, she's like, this kid goes on tour with this band for Rolling Stone, and I felt it. I was
100%.
Like, yeah,
that's you're exactly right. That's so funny. That's who I wanted to be. But I wanted to be William Miller, the protagonist, and I wanted to be Penny Lane too. You know, I was like, I just do both.
Yeah,
and I feel like,
mashup.
like to a certain extent, you can. I have.
Yeah.
Simply also by virtue of being female.
Yes.
But but yeah, that movie was really important to me, and the soundtrack, and just also the era.
Oh yeah.
In which it was set, and it was cool. It was a full circle for me last year, because the character of Penny Lane is based on Pamela DeBar, who's this famous groupie. You guys have probably. She's written a lot of books, and she's around. She's cool, really very talented writer. And I got to interview her last year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I, went to her house and hung out, and it was like, wow, this is like, you're the person that the person in this movie that I always wanted to be was based on.
Yeah,
and so I felt like I had really sort of, I felt like I had kind of like, reached a certain place that I had always dreamed of being.
That's awesome.
But in terms of like actually making that real, to go from Wisconsin to here, I went to journalism school at UW, the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And so, because I'd always been good at writing.
Okay.
And writing really became the door into the music world, because I just started covering shows.
Yeah.
Which was also a way to get into shows for free.
Right.
Yeah.
Which when I moved here, I was like super broke.
Yeah.
And so to get a free festival ticket or a free concert ticket was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
it was Christmas all the time. And then that just grew. And I started writing for more publications, and then I started working for, a few companies that were related to music, and that became really my world.
That's amazing.
So
go ahead. Yes, let the man in the room speak. It's going to be profound.
I'm curious because music is like, it's an interesting one, because it attracts all sorts, right? I mean, people can be super, super into music and have never played an instrument or not have like any inkling of that.
Yes.
And is that your story, or are you a musician as well, or what?
I wish I was.
Yeah.
I do not play any instruments, and I love to sing in the car, but I'm not a singer.
Right.
But I think, to me, writing was the next best thing. Like, if you can't be a rock star,
right,
at least go and get to see them and sort of, speak to them. Like, my job really allows me to hang out with people who are my idols, and to ask them questions and the things that I really want to know. So, it was like, I couldn't do that myself. I couldn't make music myself, but I could get as close as possible to the people doing it.
Right. Well, and then fundamentally, a lot of the people who can play music couldn't actually articulate anything about themselves outside of the music, right? So
totally.
So it really takes both. And I think that's pretty cool, because I mean, I could totally see where being able to get that deep and have a fundamental understanding of the person who's, the people behind the music, so to speak, could be a super enriching way of like getting involved.
Sure. Yeah. It's like translation almost.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people, and of course, many of them are very well spoken and articulate, but, they communicate through music.
Right.
And I communicate through words, and, most everyone can read. So I'm kind of like I'm taking what they're, who they are, and translating it for an audience in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, in like this, the reason I want to know this from you is that I think oftentimes when people think about dealing with rock stars or famous people, it's really intimidating, right? Like, you're kind of riding up to the edge of like, okay, I'm stepping into the major leagues of, kind of humaning, being, getting comfortable enough with myself that I'm not intimidated, that I can actually get real with these people.
Sure.
And really pull out the nuggets that only exist on the other side of really getting to authenticity, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So my question is, because I think that this this is a great example in music, but we all encounter that in our lives all the time, right? People or situations we're intimidated by that we never quite are able to master what's going on inside well enough to get on the other side of whatever that thing is. And so I'm curious, what tools or what ways have you found that it helps you to get past maybe your nerves or, you know, this idea of like these people are untouchable or whatever it is to get to that authenticity?
That's a really good point, or a really good question, because it's something that I think about a lot. There's a few factors that for me go into it. And one is just being really prepared, you know, to go in and do the work in terms of, you know, it's like, I feel it's more respectful to go into an interview and I've listened to your new music and I know your history and I can ask questions that aren't superficial because of that. And when I'm able to ask deeper questions, you know, artists like that. We all like that, you know, versus like, you know, what did you have for lunch today? Versus like, tell me about who you are and, you know, what your dreams were. And, you know, that is the thing that would resonate with, you know, almost any human.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to the second thing, which is just treat them like people. Because, you know, we're all human in the end. And it's hard to imagine that some of these people that they could lead a normal human existence, but they do, and they are. And so I always try to go in with the attitude of like, and even if I have to fake it, which sometimes I do, of like, this is totally normal. Right. You know, like I hang out with people like you all the time and I'm not intimidated at all. When on the inside, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Just like, don't scream. Yeah. And there are times when I have to like, you know, I'm such a fan at the end of the day. I have to like dig my fingernails into my hands to just calm myself down. Don't do that. That's not a great thing to do. But you know, a lot of deep breaths. But just, you know, that also helps put people at ease.
Yeah.
And when people are at ease, they're more likely to share, you know, deeper and more interesting things. And I think also, and you know, this takes time, and it also applies to, you know, people who aren't music journalists, but be someone who they can trust with the information that they're giving. I think that, you know, I hope what I've tried to do is establish myself as a writer who's not going to do a gotcha story. Like, I'm not going to take your quotes out of context, and I'm not going to try to manipulate what you said. I just want to really, you know, do a service to these people who I think are interesting and incredible and talented, you know? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great, because I think this is something that we really, even though we're kind of a health and fitness, you know, that's our primary focus. I think what really makes a difference in people's lives is for them to be able to tease out these little details of how to like veer off of the normal path. So like we all have these patterns that we exist in. And so when you're going into any kind of situation, whether it's interviewing someone famous or it's a new job interview or it's, you know, stepping into a new career, whatever it is, you have to veer off the normal path that you're used to.
Right.
And like, I'm always interested in how people negotiate that transfer of energy. Like, how do you go forward into this new experience without getting overwhelmed, scared, and that you can do a service to the experience? You don't just, you know, white knuckle it, barely get through it and go, oh, great, I'm glad that's over with.
Right.
But you really embody the experience and you bring something to it that makes it more powerful for the other person. You have an exchange that leaves them feeling like, wow, I'm really glad I got to meet that person.
Absolutely. That's the best feedback that I can get, is when an artist or their publicist will tell me, hey, I really enjoyed that conversation. Or it's like, you know, it's not that it's nice to be memorable, and it's nice to feel that you gave them something too.
Yes.
Because, you know, a lot of these people, and, you know, there are rock stars in any realm. There's rock stars in health and wellness and in fitness and in, you know, it's like, it doesn't necessarily matter sort of the genre you're working in, because those people are everywhere. But sort of that, you know, you gave them an experience too, and provided the opportunity and the platform for them to really talk about things that they care about and get that message out. Yeah, and authenticity and being genuine is just the huge part of it for me. It's like, I just try to be as real as possible, you know, and make direct eye contact and kind of watch my body language and just do everything I can to make the other person feel comfortable.
Yeah, you got to think that, I mean, especially people who've been around for a while. Well, I don't know, actually. There's probably, well, I'll ask it in two ways. So you would, I guess, if you've been around for a long time and you've had journalism or journalists maybe take advantage and get those kind of gotcha stories and that kind of stuff, you might be a little bit gun shy, right?
Sure,
so
yeah.
So there's those people who you're having to do everything you were just talking about to really try to bring them to ease. But what about people who are kind of new? You know what I mean? Like the rise to stardom was relatively quick, and now all of a sudden, they're everywhere and getting bombarded from every direction.
Right. Well, new people are often the best interviews because they haven't put that wall up yet, and they're still, really eager to share, and they haven't necessarily been trained in the right way to, hide information or sort of, dance around questions. And so I find that some of my best interviews are with new people. And in terms of, you're making an important point, because I interviewed, for example, a singer recently, and she's 15 years old.
Wow.
And so which that presented its own set of challenges. But she's everywhere.
Right.
And she's blowing up. And so, of course, I read all the stories about her before I interviewed her. And I found initially that she was kind of giving the same answers, which is totally reasonable. Like, you're 15 years old.
Yeah, you only have a certain amount of experience.
Exactly. And she was very well spoken, but she just didn't necessarily have that much more to give. And so again, it's about preparedness and just sort of knowing to ask questions that are going to perhaps lead in a different direction because of what she's already given.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So that's interesting because so when you were talking about being super prepared, I didn't even think about that as a perspective of already having an understanding of the stories that are out there.
Right.
Not just what is this person, what's their background and all of these things so that you can ask intelligent questions, but what questions haven't been asked, or at least not to your satisfaction. That's smart.
You're so well prepared. Pick up some tips. Yeah. Well, it's with new artists, it can create the narrative for the rest of their career. Like Amy Schumer said it once, whatever they write about you in the first story, that's what people will believe about you going forward. Like that's who you are. Yeah. Because that's what people reference and what they refer to. And so especially when I'm covering new artists, I really want to make an effort to make sure that story is true to who they are, because I know that people are going to look back on it and read it and sort of bounce their questions off of what I have written, because that's what I do with other journalists.
But isn't this what we do in life in general? Like, even in our own relationships, we talk, so-and-so, she's the one who blah, blah, blah.
Right, yeah, right? Exactly.
And it's like, we actually do this in life. You become, he's the butcher, or he's the whatever your claim to fame is, your story.
She's that girl that does that thing in the hut at the...
Exactly. She was that aerialist that, does all the things. It's like, we all kind of do that, and then you sort of shorthand it, right? Yes. And you just go back to that reference point for everybody. So it's kind of an interesting thing to even just consider on a global spectrum. Like, do we take time to renegotiate or revisit the categories we put people in? And I know, I think about this growing up when, probably in a small town, you definitely get created in a certain way when you're a kid, right? Everyone knows you as, I don't know what they knew you as, but they knew you as Katie, the big smile and, beautiful brown eyes girl who liked to play soccer.
I'm sure that was it. That could not play soccer.
That could not play soccer. She could not play soccer.
The drama club.
Yes. Okay, there you go.
President.
Right, there you go. But you get a thing, and then you're that thing.
Right.
And this is, I think, why it's actually interesting and difficult for people when they stay in their hometowns to ever really redefine who they are. Yeah. Because you kind of get stuck a little bit with that old paradigm of how people know you. And
Absolutely.
So I think it's interesting, and this is why I thought it would be such a fun conversation, because this is about, musicians and people larger in life and in the media, but we do this in our everyday lives,
Sure. And all the tools that I'm talking about are just things that I try to do with people, and it's not that I'm even ticking boxes in my head of all right, I've made eye contact and I've asked about their past work. It's just, you just try to be real and genuine with people, and foster a genuine connection.
Right.
And that can apply to any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of them.
Yeah,
except for Twitter. Except for Twitter relationships.
Yeah, we could talk about that for a while.
but it's I think it's a real thing to, I don't know, concerned is the right word, but it's definitely something to think about, that our news feeds, our media attention, our attention span in general, is so quick these days. It's like the last time that I sat down and read a full article that was written about something was quite a while ago, and like zipping through looking for the big bold pieces that are like tweet this, like, wait, what did they say? And read back and get through it. And I mean, and I actually enjoy reading. It's something that I do, but just now with all of the various things that are going on, it can be pretty difficult to grab somebody's attention.
It is very difficult.
Yeah. So it's interesting to think about. And maybe just from a process perspective, and we've talked a little bit about how you prepare for these interviews and you do this, but how much, if any, thought goes into literally grabbing people's attention right out? Like, have you had to change the way that you write? You know what I mean? Where it's like there's sort of a standard structure that's like, well, we're going to lay this out, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go here. And are you finding yourself like, right out the gate to try to grab people?
Yeah. Well, it's let's see, how do I say it? I don't know that I've changed the way that I write necessarily, but it's changed the kind of stories that are written. Stories now are typically much shorter.
Right.
Because people don't sit down to read an entire feature like they used to, because our attention spans are so short. So you find a lot of, BuzzFeed is a great example.
Right.
Of like, those aren't really stories, it's lists, and it's just really quick soundbite pieces that people can fly through and just process very quickly, and then, more likely than not forget about.
Right.
But, and I've worked in the realm where I was writing a lot of news and doing things that were more digestible like that. But I love to write a long feature, know, and there is, of course, still a place for those. Although, the way that journalism is heading, it's a very shaky time, because so many publications are closing and being bought by owners that don't understand, ethics.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, journalistic integrity. And so I think, me and all my friends that are journalists are just sort of like watching and hoping and doing what we can to write the kind of stories that we love and do it with integrity, and, just praying that things work out.
Yeah. Well, I think they will. Like it's kind of weird. I ride the line between pessimist and optimist, on a lot of things, but I'm like a humanities optimist. I think that fundamentally there's something about a good story and storytelling and the written word, the spoken word, that is it's just in us. And and like you said, BuzzFeed's a perfect example. That stuff is just chatter that eventually leaves you wanting for like substance.
Yes.
So I think people are going to come back around, frankly. I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, the need and the desire to hear stories is innate. People used to sit around the campfire and do it, or, you get together with your friends for dinner or drinks and you tell each other your stories of your lives. Like, we love stories. That's how we relate and, understand our own lives and understand each other. So that is like a primal craving.
Yeah. I think that's why we love the podcast so much, because it is a way to talk story, which in our busy lives, we don't get to just sit and talk. Especially we sit here and we're off our phones.
Right.
We're making eye contact. We're actually really engaged in the art of storytelling and connecting. And we don't realize how little time we have for that, because even if you are having drinks or dinner, the waiter's coming and you're disrupted, but like, this is such a beautiful, sacred way to actually talk, and share story. And I think that's why we've fallen in love with the podcast medium so much. It's just,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's almost another way, like, it's almost a way to be an author or be, it's one of these mediums now that I think that's why people are really connecting to them as well.
I agree. And I think it lends itself to the way that people live their lives too. I listen to podcasts everywhere. I listen to them in the car. I listen to them while I'm taking walks. Like, it's stories on the go, wherever you need them to be. But it does feel like it has depth and it's genuine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about psychedelics, if you're game.
Oh, yeah, let's go to the hut.
Yeah, let's do it.
Follow me to the
yes.
The weird hut in the corner.
So I'm curious, obviously you had this love for music. At what point did psychedelics seem like the likely next step for you in order to...
Well, you go to enough music festivals, and you're at least going to witness that world. And so for me, music was the door to entry for the psychedelic aspect, just because I was going to Bonnaroo and I was going to fish shows and I was going to places where people were doing, mushrooms and LSD and, all those wonderful, wonderful medicines or substances or however you consider those things.
Right.
So that was my door to entry. But then it became sort of an interest unto itself. And I think living in Los Angeles was a huge piece of that, because that community here is very, very vibrant.
Yeah.
And there's just so much good stuff going on in terms of really acknowledging the healing and like creative powers of these substances. It's just like, it's really, the culture around that here is incredible.
Yeah, definitely. It's so interesting. I was thinking about the first time that I did mushrooms the other day, and I was pretty young, so I was trying to remember like bits and pieces of it, because now it was a long time ago. And I remember thinking, I was in my friend's apartment and he was swinging a guitar around in the air. And so I was just seeing all these tracers of guitars. And I remember this thought as clear as day. I was like, this is what the Doors were singing about.
Now this is all making sense.
This is what they were talking about.
It does start to make sense.
It does,
the first time I did mushrooms, I was at a Tom Petty concert.
Nice.
And it was they were playing American Girl, and it was the best thing that had ever happened.
Yeah.
As far as I was concerned, I was like, all right, like this is a whole new realm, and like I want to exist here, on a regular basis, in ways. And I think this also becomes easier to do as you get older and more mature, but in ways that are healthy, and productive.
Yeah. It's so great, because I love the conversations around psychedelics, because the narrative has been so long that these things were bad for you, and that if you went down this path using drugs, you were destined for a certain kind of life. And the people in LA are just proving that is not the case.
Doesn't seem to be the situation.
It's just
here.
not the case. Like there are plenty of people there. I mean, I would say the majority of people here are leading incredible lives, and there's such a vibrancy about creativity here, and there's so much possibility here. That's what I think is so amazing. And I think a lot of people are using it as a catalyst for possibility.
Yes.
To explore that, what's possible for me.
What's possible, and what's possible when I've, dealt with my bullshit.
Right.
Like I've grieved these things and I've been able to let go of things, and that clears so much space, and just offers, for me personally, I can only speak for myself, but like such a level of compassion that I didn't have before, of like, wow, like if I was feeling this way, then a lot of other people are probably feeling that way. And it just has kind of exposed me to, or made me feel a level of like love and connection to most humans and living things.
And I think did you go to the MAPS conference?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah. Maybe you could just talk a little bit. I think I saw this come across your Facebook feed, of course. And I was like, this is why, like, I feel like over the years, I don't know how long we've actually been Facebook friends, but I feel like I've just like stored these little nuggets. I'm like, oh, she's at MAPS. Okay, check. I like her more.
So, the conference was incredible. It was last April in Oakland. And I think it was the first one they had done in 3 or 4 years, because MAPS, which I'm sure your listeners know, is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And they are they're getting very close to having MDMA legalized for therapeutic use, which is really exciting, because it's such a promising therapy for people with PTSD and other sorts of trauma. My understanding is that the conference was sort of designed around that trajectory. But they had people from around the world there. I mean, I don't have an exact head count, but there were thousands of people there from South America and Europe and, Africa and all over the United States and Canada, and just sharing their research. And a lot of scientists and a lot of very sort of like quantitative, hard numbers, science people, doctors. And then they had more storytelling, and they had people sharing their films and, giving talks and playing music. And I learned so much. It was the thing last year, and obviously last year culturally was challenging in a lot of ways. I point to that and think that is the thing that gave me the most hope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I felt so inspired leaving.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think is really interesting about MAPS in general, is that, and I'm sure you've probably heard Rick Doblin talk about his kind of whole story with this stuff. I mean, he started out and was like, in the Timothy Leary days, right? And he's like, no, this is super important. The psychedelics are going to change the world, and we're going to go at it this way. And then came up against a point where he's like, you know what? We're never going to solve this problem from the Volkswagen bus.
Correct.
And he went to school and he became a lobbyist essentially. Right. I mean, this is like his thing. He's like, we have to get this from the government's perspective and have a voice that understands, that speaks both languages, that can fundamentally push this stuff forward. And it's just incredible to me what they have been able to accomplish. And I think exactly what you're saying is like is a piece of it, where you have the hard scientists there, these for the most part, some of the most objective thinkers in a lot of cases are like, show me what it is. I don't know if this is true or not. Let's figure it out. Let's ask the right questions and sort this stuff out kind of people. But then mixing that with the people, the anecdotal evidence, and the people who have been using these substances, a lot of them culturally for sometimes thousands of years.
Right. Yeah.
To bring this stuff together in one spot where people can start to really grasp the holistic nature of it, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Right.
It's cool. It is like, I'm 100% with you. Like, that's the thing that gives me the most hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I interviewed Rick ahead of the conference for a San Francisco paper. And he told me, he made a point that I thought was really, it just kind of shows the level of their strategy and their intelligence, is that they're doing a lot of work with, veterans programs and publications that, exist in mostly red states or very conservative areas, because they see the veterans who is, they're working with in a huge way with these MDMA trials as their sort of door to entry for populations that may otherwise perceive these substances as, drugs. Right. Drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. If you do drugs, you're a criminal.
Right.
And showing them like, no, these things actually can affect in a very profound way, very quickly, people that you care about. Right. And you understand their experience and that they went to war and they were traumatized in this way or that way. Mm-hmm. And so, I have so much respect for what they're doing. I think they're just amazing.
Yeah, it's cool stuff, man. And just the numbers are remarkable. I mean, there's... I think, what was it, the initial MDMA study that got them, I think, kind of on board to where they are now was, I think the protocol was like 3 just regular talk therapy sessions and then 1 MDMA assisted session and then like 2 follow-up sessions, and it like knocked out 84% or something of treatment resistant PTSD, which is unheard of. There's nothing that does that.
I mean, I have goosebumps. It works. Yeah. And I think that anyone that has gone to a show even and done mushrooms, like, it will tell you can, we can speak for ourselves. It works. Yeah. It just leads to places where I can't get on my own.
Right.
You know, and I come back from those places and I'm like, oh, that is useful information that I can apply to my daily life.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I was talking to someone about this last week because I really feel like the beautiful thing about hallucinogens and MDMA and mushrooms, all these things, is that they actually give you the foresight to almost like look at things in a way that you didn't have access to before. But I also think that it's so important to follow that up with the integration piece.
Yes.
And to really like take that information and integrate it into your day-to-day. So what are some of the ways that you integrate that information? Like, if you have a profound experience, what have you found that you've had success with to really make it a part of how you move forward?
Sure. That's a good question. Well, I use the skill set that, is most comfortable for me. I write it down. I write a lot of this stuff down, like the big lessons, even if I'm just like on my phone, I just make sure that before the thought or whatever goes away, that I sort of get it on paper and have a list of just takeaway points from any experience. What I've found in the community in which I do ayahuasca, there's a big talking session in the morning. And I know that not every community does that or every circle does that, but I find that that's very helpful just to verbalize, because a lot of these things happen internally. And so to talk it out and really put it into words makes it real in a way. And then you also get this huge blessing of hearing everybody else's experiences and sort of gleaning information off them.
Right.
So talking it out and really like words, verbalizing things that are, not verbalized while they're happening.
Yeah. Right. And it's funny too, because it's like, I find that finding the words to adequately describe it is like part of it. Right.
Well, and, I think maybe my process is different from people that make music or, have another mode of expression, because I know people that have had really profound experiences with psychedelics, and they've recorded an album or written a poem, whatever way it comes out of you, like, I think carries the essential force of what your experience was, and thus will be helpful and healing, not only for you, but if you're to share it with other people.
Yeah. I think the group thing is pretty important. I mean, it's kind of a standard medium in a lot of, especially like trauma care stuff, right? So you're going to get a group of peers. It's like fundamentally people who have some level of relatability around whatever the problem is, and sure. Like in an ayahuasca circle, that's like, you guys just had the experience together. You know what I mean? Like fundamentally there's a level of relatability there, but to be able to just speak about things openly with a group who is on the same level as you, at least for the moment, right, is incredibly powerful. I mean,
incredibly. Yeah. What you just said makes me think of a story that I wrote a few years ago about a guy, an older gentleman that had been in Vietnam and had some PTSD as a function of that, and then went to Peru to do ayahuasca. And I forget what exactly got him down there, but he got down there, and he said that he had not felt as close and deeply connected with people that he didn't really, know since Vietnam.
Right.
Like, it gave him that same feeling of sort of being, in the trenches, because you go through these experiences with people, and it's, if you've done it, it's hugely profound, and it's very, it's special, and it's hard to describe, like you're saying, to people that haven't been there,
that haven't done it, right?
Yeah, which is, I guess, like war.
Well, exactly, right? I mean, and I think that's a critical piece. I mean, I know because I work for the fire department still, right? So that we do all of our critical incident stress management, which is our version of PTSD stuff, is all peer-based. I mean, it's a very specific. I think like behavioral psychology has known this for a while. Like there's a way to get certain types of people to talk about the things they need to talk about. And the way to do that is to put them in groups of people that they know that they can relate to and that they know that they can trust.
Sure.
And that's what seems to be going on in a lot of cases, I think, with the psychedelics, is that it breaks down that wall of distrust between you and yourself, fundamentally, in a lot of cases. You read these stories about these guys, veterans who've done, one of the MDMA trials or something, and some of the things they talk about are like, I had no idea that I could love myself this deeply, and so if you think about that, I mean, that's just worth its weight in gold, whether you had post-traumatic stress or not,
But like, we could all use that.
The ability, but the ability to sort of break down that wall and understand that you're just a human on this rock like everybody else, right. And that everybody else, like fundamentally, if you can break down that wall, everybody's in the same boat, and it's, it's powerful stuff. And it's like, I just can't wait, because there's so many, I think, groups of people who are going to benefit from this, and it's just, it can't come fast enough almost,
Right.
The world is crying for it literally right now. It's just like the politically, emotionally, whatever, everyone, it's like people are really hurting. I mean, even just the shooting this week, it's like we're just aching as a world. And I think these plant medicines they really are therapeutic in nature, and I think that's really the magic of them.
Right. Yeah. And it goes back to what we were saying about living in Los Angeles in this time. Like, and of course it's happening other places too, but it's very vibrant here. So it's such an exciting time to be in this place.
Yes.
Because there's so much going on and so much promise, and just an openness that, I've not experienced in many other places.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because you can kind of get used to that. The echo chamber in the back, you know what I mean? And everybody's like, hey, it's like whatever. And people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
totally.
Nothing. Just, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me.
That's funny. That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
So going back to Wisconsin, I've learned that's true.
Yeah. And we're from California, but we're from small towns in Northern California. But the difference for us was that we grew up in like the land of marijuana growers. So there was always like that undercurrent of, of psychedelics and just drugs as, kind of counterculture, I guess you could say, but not scary, not the way that it was painted, and
just part of life.
Just like part of life.
It's just like
like wine and weed. Like it's just the thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's such a very different context.
It is. Yeah.
And I definitely grew up in the world of like drugs you will die.
Right.
And you will also go to hell. And, only people that are criminals do drugs. And, know, in a way, I'm grateful for that because it really scared me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I would never do, it kept me away from those things until I was mature enough to try them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And so, it's not the route that I advocate at all.
Yeah.
Like fear is, just a sad substitute for education and information.
Right.
But in a way, it worked for me.
Yeah. No, totally. It's interesting because we have friends who were raised Mormon or, really strict religious values. Sure. And so it was interesting, like hearing different versions of it. I think that some kids do like you do, they stay away. And then some kids are like, oh, drugs are bad. So if I'm going to do them, I'm going to do any of them. Like they're all bad. It doesn't matter.
Because you have no context for what it is. And you also have no one that you can turn to for information because you're so scared.
Yes.
Or not even. You're just, that you're doing something wrong. So you're not going to reach out to someone who could potentially help you out.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like abstinence only education.
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Doesn't
Totally.
pan out.
So I'm curious because I know that you write for LA Weekly frequently, right? Okay, so how does this process of choosing a story, does the story choose you? Do you choose it? Does the publication choose you?
Sure.
Tell us about that process.
Okay, yeah. Before I go into that, I should say that LA Weekly was recently purchased by a new group of owners who laid off the entire editorial staff.
I heard this.
And it's not a good situation. Like the paper has gone dramatically downhill in terms of organization and actual journalism in the 2 months since it's happened. So I haven't written for LA Weekly since then. And neither have any of my friends or colleagues, just because what's going on there isn't good. But I wrote about, we're working on this whole boycott, plan to hopefully resurrect it eventually.
Okay.
But I did write for the Weekly for years before this situation. And it was amazing. Like it's a place in LA that really gave me my start. And there's a lot of cachet to that name too. So it helped create access. And in terms of pitching, initially when I was just getting started, pitching was, really, really important because no one knew who I was. And so it's just having an idea or finding something that I was really particularly interested in and knowing that I wanted to write about it and just forming that pitch and then finding the editor and, hoping the editor responds. It can be an opaque process for sure, the way that stories are assigned and the way that they come. But I would say that now, stories are pitched to me, stories are assigned to me, which is awesome. Right. And then I pitch as well. And I just make sure that I'm finding the right publication and the right editor and people that I, like and trust and enjoy working with.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I this is like so much of why I wanted to have this conversation because I think that it's such a, like you said, opaque process. Like there's so much kind of smoke and mirrors of how this goes. Yep. And I love this because I feel like listeners out there can take this as an example and just recognize that like even in the most blurry of routes where you can't tell exactly how to create something, that your commitment to what you want to create is what really gets you through, and your commitment to having an idea, having a voice, having a story, and just knowing that it's worth being shared will help you find the way.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And knowing like rejection will be a part of it. And my skin has definitely gotten thicker when I don't hear back from editors or whoever, but, to be very reductive, my mother always said, if you throw enough shit at the wall, something's going to stick. Yeah. So I would just think about it like that. Like, I'm just going to throw some shit at the wall and someone's going to respond because it's a matter of trusting in your ideas too, which, I think can sound sort of like hard to do, or there's no actual pragmatic actions to take to like, trust your ideas.
Right.
But it's just trust what you're interested in.
Yes.
And trust that you're passionate about it. And that is the sort of same thing, I think.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, you're not the only one. Like if you find it interesting, then guaranteed there's going to be other people that do too.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of connecting those dots.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's very cool. Yeah.
So, we're going to just kind of bat you all over the place here. So I want to talk a little bit about like live music coverage or festival coverage.
Sure.
So, well, first, What year was that? Jack White was at Coachella.
Oh gosh,
did you happen to see Jack White?
The year
at Coachella?
Jack White was there a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Was it? Were you there weekend too?
Yes, I was.
Yes. Oh my god. Can we have like a?
Yeah.
It was life changing.
One of the most incredible shows. I have a photo of myself that a friend took of me during that concert, and I have my hand on my heart, and I'm just smiling at the sky. I mean, I'm like just sublimely happy.
It was amazing. It was.
That was
I have the chills.
What did you guys love about it?
I think that honestly, it was a true rock and roll moment. Is what I felt.
When he was having us yell, "Music is sacred."
Yes.
You're just like, what is happening here? You know?
I mean, we could do a whole podcast about my feelings about Jack White.
Oh my gosh, me too. This might be part 2.
I mean, like addendum or like special episode component. But I mean, I've loved him since the White Stripes came out, and he to me is one of like I don't want to say one of the last, but like he's this real deal, old school style rock star.
No joke, you know, and one of the things that for me, like one of the things that just nails it, or that he just nails, is that he's an incredible guitar player. Like his musical skills are just off the charts, but it's his confidence and the attitude that he brings to the songs that he sings and writes that make it. You're just like, you're
major
not
swagger.
Yeah, it's like you don't have a great voice, you know what I mean? But he just brings it, you know, in a way that is it's just unbelievable. And so, like, I've, been a fan for quite a while, but never seen him live. I don't even know that I'd necessarily even seen, like, music videos or anything, so I had no idea what to expect.
You got a treat then.
Oh, my God, yeah. That was quite a show.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, and I've been going to shows since I can remember. Like, I just have been, my parents are the same music lovers. We just went to music all of the time. I'm a musician, too, and I feel like that moment was like, I felt like this is what people talked about when they saw Jimi Hendrix, or like those iconic moments where there's just, you pierced the veil of reality for a moment, and he led us all to a new place that we had never been to before.
That guy has it. Whatever it is, he has got it. I've never seen, and that show was very special because it was so big. It's one thing to play to a small club or even a venue like the Forum, but there were, there must have been 60 or 70,000 people there. And I didn't speak to one person, whether you were in the front or in the back, that left feeling like they didn't get more than enough.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know about this guy. Like that didn't happen at all.
No, he grabbed us all by the hand and, didn't give us a choice. Like we were going with him.
He played the audience. Like that was the thing, is I remember looking out at the audience and I'm like, he's not only playing his music, he's playing the audience like they are an extension of his instrument. Like we are all going along for the ride in this. I mean, I was on LSD and I'm so glad because it was like, thank you so much for this perfect, amazing moment. But like, it was just such a awesome. Beautiful, like, it was just one of the most incredible moments musically of my life.
He's one of the best of all time, hands down.
Definitely.
So I'm glad that you were there, because this whole conversation framed up the question really well. So how in the hell do you cover that? Like how do you attack translating an experience like that into paper?
That is a good question, because you don't want to be too histrionic, and being like, this is the best thing that's ever happened.
Sorry you missed it.
Sorry you missed it, and you'll always regret that. By Katie Bain. No, I think it's important to be really specific. And it's hard to describe what music sounds like in words. You can, but that to me is not the most interesting stuff. You want to know what they said between songs, what they were wearing, who in the crowd next to you said what, like the mood, just like the substances people seem to be on. I just like getting really granular with like what exactly was happening in the scene itself. And then of course you have to describe the music a little bit, but, and just trying to find a broader theme of what it meant. Like, does this mean that, rock and roll isn't dead, or that rock music belongs at Coachella? And, the answer to those are, no and yes.
Yeah, whatever
But just kind of finding if I can, what it means in a broader cultural context.
Yeah.
But good answer.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I'm impressed. That was a good. I was like, what is she gonna say? I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
Well, it's not easy, and I found that the shows that I'm the most excited about are the ones that are hardest to write, because it's like, God, how do I translate that?
Yeah.
You know, like, how do I even do it justice? But I find too that reviews and coverage are most often read by the people who were there.
Right.
You know, we kind of write it for each other. Just like, let's just talk about what just happened. You know, so the people, they know, you know, they know what the music sounded like. They know how they felt. And they want to just hear sort of a perspective or like a
recap.
Yeah,
what happened.
Yeah.
So that actually, that's totally spot on. So I remember reading, what the hell, who did we see downtown? It was their last show, the Swedish House Mafia.
Oh yeah, Swedish House Mafia.
I was there.
Did you write? So did you write a piece about that?
The LA Weekly piece, the review.
That's hilarious.
Oh, that's funny.
So this,
it's
like,
full
I
circle.
literally read that and was just, it rang true.
Oh my God, that is, you know,
there was something about, there was a line in there about, what is the song that they play? Oh, this is terrible.
Don't you worry. Like,
no, it's not that one. They cover.
Let's just list some dead Swedish House Mafia tracks.
They cover
Greyhound.
It's one that they played anyway. There was a song that they have a vocal track from. I'm just can't believe I'm blanking on this super popular pop song, but the vocal track runs in one of their songs. But anyway, you plucked that out in the article, because I'm pretty sure it was your article, and it was like this line in there about as the crowd starts to dissipate and walk away, and the echoes of this song playing in the back of your head, and I'm like, that's exactly what was going on, you know? It was exactly it.
Oh, I'm so touched that you read that and remember it. I loved writing that story. That was one that just kind of came out.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes there's a struggle, and sometimes it's just like, oh my gosh, here it is. It's just coming through me. I just need to write it down. That show was magic.
Was it ridiculous?
It was ridiculous.
The rain was everything. Like the little drizzle in LA, which never happens.
Never happens. It was kind of muddy, and it was like a little cold.
Yeah.
That to me, you know, again, we could do a whole podcast about my feelings about Swedish House Mafia.
Yeah.
But, you know, people have very strong opinions about EDM, you know, like, it sucks. No, it's amazing. No, it sucks. Or it's overly commercialized. You know, like, and there's valid points in all of that. But to me, that Swedish House Mafia show and that tour was just the pinnacle of that sound.
Agreed.
And they did it so well.
Yeah.
And it was, again, 60,000 people probably of a cuddle puddle. Like, literally everyone was like kind of touching and completely happy about it. And there was such a beautiful vibe. I just remember like, this was kind of in my earlier years of really getting to know electronic dance music. Sure. I was still like in a dating phase with it. And I was like, I get it. This is what they're talking about.
Dance music, I write a lot about. And I find that to really get it, people have this... I did a column for a while called The Night I Fell in Love with Dance Music, because you can hear it on the radio or through your headphones, and it's amazing. But to go out and experience it and feel that visceral thing, like, it changes people.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
It does. Yeah.
Sorry, that song is right on the tip of my brain somewhere.
I should just Google Swedish House Mafia songs, because that's the worst feeling when you just
it's the like moment. It's the moment of love, or the moment. God, what is that?
We're gonna get it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
It's gonna happen right now.
That's so funny that you wrote that article, because it's like it's the one piece of
save the world, right? If I could say no, it's not.
That is
no, it wasn't. I'm not sure which was. So it's I mean, Greyhound, Don't You Worry, Child.
But that particular article is like the one thing I can drop a pin on, to have had that exact experience of having been at the show and then picked up LA Weekly and read the article and was just like, yes,
I'm so glad.
This is totally nailed it, you know?
I'm really glad.
It's funny to be, like, what's one of the things about being in LA, as opposed to where we used to live in Northern California, is that you can do that. You know what I mean? There are shows here, and then there is LA Weekly, and you know what I mean? Like, you can share in these experiences here that you don't necessarily get other places. Like, you pick up LA Weekly when you're living in Northern California, and you're like, oh, cool, somebody went to somewhere and did something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It seems so far away.
Yeah, it just doesn't come together like that.
It is really funny how communal LA does get after a while. It's like, you think of it as this huge city that seems, I remember when I came here, I was so intimidated and it seemed so unapproachable. But when you actually get here, it's a lot of good people.
Really good people.
Yeah.
Some of the best people I know are here. And there's that negative perception of everyone's fake or everyone's, whatever, out to get money or get famous. That has not been my experience at all.
Yeah.
I have met such incredible people in the city.
Temper Trap. The sweet disposition.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Remix?
Right?
I mean, we should just like put it on at the end of the show.
I know, right?
We will. We'll bookend it
I remember because they were flashing the words up on the screen.
Yes.
A moment, a love, a dream,
Yes.
a laugh.
Yes.
I just think the whole crowd was like.
This is so fun. I feel like we could, like, what other shows can we go to?
I know. We're 2 for 2.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Actually, so what are some of your all-time greatest shows? I mean, those two were pretty high up there, but
you chose 2 very good ones. I get asked this, occasionally, and I always think of, it was at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and Bon Iver.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And it was on their, I don't want to say it was their first tour, but I think it was on the Forever Ago tour. So it was like 10 years ago because that album just celebrated its 10-year anniversary. And the doors or the gates of the cemetery opened at midnight. And it was really foggy in LA that day.
Oh, nice.
It was like a really foggy weekend, which again, never really happens.
Right.
And so there was this, if you haven't been to Hollywood Forever, it's a beautiful old cemetery and very lush and just really ornate headstones and mausoleums. And so it's a very vibey place.
Right.
And they have this lawn where they show movies and do shows. And so the audience brought picnics and blankets and candles and wine and weed and just camped out all night.
Wow.
Until dawn. And just before dawn, they had like a chanting ceremony.
Oh, wow.
And then just as like dawn was breaking, Bon Iver played. And through the fog, the light turned like pink and purple.
Wow.
Like the sky was purple.
Wow.
And the show, it sounded really good. And to me, that album is just like really special. And so it was just like, all these circumstances, just like it was one of those shows where you feel like you've lifted off into space.
I love it.
So that was a really good one. Man, I mean, there have been a lot of really epic shows. I am lucky to say. I need to think here.
No, it's good. I love this because I think this is what's so magical about music is that like you have an experience with an album and that's one experience. And then you have an experience with the live show and it transforms the album. Then now you hear the album differently. You feel it differently and you experience it always from a different perspective. And that's why I think live music is so powerful. Why, it helps us transform our relationship with music by experiencing it in complete humanness.
Right. And it's kind of like what I was trying to say with Jack White, like it doesn't give you a choice. It's kind of like when it's done well, it's like I'm powerful and you're coming with me.
Yeah.
And you don't,
you're here, there's no choice.
You don't get to decide. And you go on that, journey and you come back and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm not the same,
totally.
At least not for now.
Right. And I don't want to go back to what I was before.
I'd rather not. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's really something. And like I've experienced it one time where it went the other way. We remember when we saw Nicki Minaj?
Oh my God. What happened?
It was terrible. Like it was. So, I mean, and when she was popular, you hear the songs on the radio and you're like, oh yeah, all the Nicki Minaj songs. Sure. So she came to Nokia Theater or something, right? And we're like, oh, that'll be cool. Let's go, 2 Chainz opened for her and basically just yelled at us for like 40 minutes.
What did you do wrong? 2 Chainz had to yell at you.
It was just like, what is going on in here, And then just the whole scene, it just wasn't good. It didn't translate. And we were like, all right, Yeah, and I remember when we were leaving, I remember thinking, like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just not necessarily a live Nicki Minaj fan. I'll just listen to the tracks. But then they come on, and I'm like,
It's hard to disassociate. Poor Nicki. I like her.
I do too. I do too,
yeah. But yeah, you're right. But it's nice then, that one can go back and be like, well, I just like you on your albums.
Yeah.
You're not a live band. It doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Yeah, totally.
And to be fair, like the Nokia Theater is a weird place.
It's a weird theater. I haven't been to a really truly transcendent show there.
Yeah,
honestly,
it's a little, it's too theater-ish. You know what I mean? You're sitting in seats and you're like watching it's
the
more
sound.
Like
I just remember the sound was not good. That was a big part of it.
That will ruin it.
Yeah, I mean that will ruin it. Like if the sound is not well done, especially for that kind of sound, like it has to be right, or else it's just overwhelming, and it does feel like they're yelling at you the whole time. You're like, stop it, okay, we'll be good.
I'm so sorry. I thought of another all-time great concert. Do you guys like Dark Side?
No, I don't know Dark Side.
Oh man,
we might.
You are in for a treat.
Oh yeah, okay.
Dark Side. Do you know Nicholas Jar? He's a producer and very talented. I think he's really like one of the best artists of the moment for sure. But like also like longer than that. Like he's a really brilliant mind and a really brilliant artist. And so he produces primarily electronic music, but he had a duo for, I don't know, not that long, like a year or two or maybe 3, called Dark Side. And it was him and
I have seen this now,
Dave Harrington. And you're going to love their album. It's called Psychic.
Okay.
And it's just like really dreamy and sexy and like dark and transportive.
Nice.
But live, I mean, me and my friends joke that we get like Hare Krishna eyes, when we talk about like, do you have a minute to talk about Dark Side? We get like,
let's start
we try to convert people and we get a little crazy face. But with good reason, because they put on such an incredible show. It's really psychedelic, but it's really like deep and sexy. And
ooh, I'm excited.
You're gonna like it. And I think there's probably SoundCloud shows, like you can hear the live show, because the live show is just exponentially greater than the album itself, and the album is great. So.
Yeah. Right. Isn't it interesting how you can listen to a SoundCloud, like a live show, and actually get the vibe? I'm always surprised by that, where you can actually pick it up. I love to listen to, like, even on Tidal, they have live albums a lot of times.
Right.
Cool. Yeah.
And you can actually like, you can feel it. I don't know. I don't like it. Amazes me that you can actually tap into it. And it goes to show that like there is something beyond that moment that is transportive. Like you can take it and like pass it forward.
Yes.
Because it's not just like you had to be there. Like you can actually get the drift of it. Even when you watch, actually the first time I ever saw Florence Welch was on YouTube. I was watching, what's the one that they have in Chicago? Lollapalooza. Yeah, I was watching Lollapalooza and she came on live. And I fell in love with her then through YouTube. And I was like, oh my gosh, this chick is a powerhouse.
Barefoot gypsy running around.
Yeah. She opened for, she was before Jack White at that Coachella. Yeah. And we actually randomly went to both weekends that year. Like we were super hardcore. We're like, we're doing it.
We're Coachellaing.
I'm just going to go again. Yeah.
It's always like, well, I know a guy who might have a wristband, so I think I might go on Saturday.
Exactly.
Like, you end up there.
Yeah, totally. So we saw her the first weekend before she broke her foot. It was like, I feel like that was her weekend, and then the second weekend was Jack White's weekend. But she's just like a magical being. She just, the energy and the way that she will pull you in is incredible.
She's the real deal. She's got, such a voice and just such a vision. Like the way that all of the album art, the way she dresses, it's just like, so fully formed.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And it seems like either she has whoever her handlers are do an incredible job of making it seem authentic, or that's really all her jam. You know what I mean? Because there's so much continuity between the songwriting and her aesthetic and the way she performs and the whole thing. It's like, it's either really her or somebody's nailing it.
Or someone's doing a great job. Well, it is interesting to me, and I think about this a lot, how, we were saying artists are people too, and have daily lives, and really, I think in some respects become like avatars.
And
the thing that they present to the world becomes this thing that exists outside of themselves, and often it can become so big that they have to sort of disconnect, you know, and like that's Florence, you know, for example, that's Florence and the Machine, and I'm Florence, you know, and it's different things, so just that they can sort of deal with their lives.
Totally, yeah.
And I just think it must be such a strange existence, because then there's this version of you out there that is doing things, you know.
Yeah, you're like, oh, there's Florence and the Machine.
Yeah, and like I'm just at home like drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, but she's having, you know, a great day on Twitter or whatever. You know?
It's so true. It's like this persona becomes something outside of you for sure. Yeah, it's very interesting.
That's a trip.
So what's next for you? Like, what would be the be all end all like dream? Is it to keep writing for the rest of your life? Is it to create your own your own paper? Like what's the ideal life like for you?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know that I'm a 5-year plan kind of person, you know? I take opportunities as they come, and you know, I'm very lucky that they have kept coming. But the dream and really the goal and the thing I'm working on is a book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that is sort of at the forefront for me at the moment. And, you know, some days are better than others in terms of how much I get done, but it's something that I'm actively working on right now.
Awesome. And if you don't mind, like, what's the preface of the book?
I can't tell you.
Okay, cool. No.
Secret book.
That's cool. That's great.
Right now.
Is it within the music world?
Yeah, it does have to do with music.
Okay, cool.
It has actually to do with everything that we've been talking about, music and travel and psychedelics. And,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
If fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Okay.
Yeah, my brain I don't have a fiction mind. I so respect people who process information that way, but I have to live it or see it or hear it to be able to write about it.
Yeah,
me too.
yeah,
like,
got
I can't even make up like a decent kid story.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like, Uncle Adam, tell me a story. I'm like, well, let's talk about chemistry. So there's a molecule.
They're like sleeping.
Like, this is stupid. Yeah,
it's a cute molecule. Yeah, he's wearing a hat.
And mission accomplished.
Funny.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this has been such a cool conversation. I really appreciate this, because it's like, this is the magic of just randomly reaching out to someone and being like, I feel like this would be a good conversation, and it really has. So thank you.
Thank you for trusting your gut. It's such a blast.
Oh yeah, I'm all about the gut these days. I'm like, get out of the way, brain. You're so boring.
Someone said the other day, I forget the exact wording, but he said all of my wisdom, my best wisdom exists below my neck.
Yeah.
You know, and my neighborhood is often a bad neighborhood to hang out in. But everything I know, I really know it in my body. And that's how I know it's right. And I thought that was just, you know, it's something that we all, you know to a certain extent, but that really rang true for me. Like, even when you listen to music, like, it hits you, you know, in your body. And that's how you kind of get to that place of joy and ecstasy.
Yeah. I totally agree. So if there's one thing that you could leave people with, like, that has made all the difference for you, or it could be even like a couple of things that has made all the difference for you when you're on that path and you're going forward and you're like coming up against something that's maybe a new experience or bigger than what you've experienced before, you know, something outside of the realm of what you're comfortable with. What's something that you can leave people with and how to navigate that moment?
Sure. Okay. Man, I would say I try to just be open, and I try to be nice, you know, and genuine, you know, and if I don't know something, I say that I don't know, and I really do my best. And I'm no angel by any means, but I just try to be really honest, you know, and those are the things that have really sort of, you know, guided me through life. I don't know. Was that?
Yeah, no, that's
right
perfect.
Answer? Was that the right answer?
That was right. Yes.
Were those 4 things you were looking for?
Yeah.
Sorry, you have to stay 4 more days.
I just try to be nice. You know, I think that I always remember when people are kind to me, and I know that everyone's going through something. You know, and you know, you get what you give. Right. You know, like the golden rule is very real. Like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so I just try to like lead with that. Yeah,
that's a good one. Words of wisdom.
Yeah.
So listen to Swedish House Mafia.
Like,
people are gonna be like,
those lyrics. Here are those lyrics to a song.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So where can people find you on the interwebs?
Sure. I have, if you want to read some of my stories, I have a website. It's mskatiebain.com. So just MSKATIEBAIN. That's how you spell my name.
I think that's how you spell it. Yep.
And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Bane of Your Existence. So thank you.
Yeah.
BAINOFYREXSTNCE.
Awesome.
It's a little tricky, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And what are you
Well, we'll
covering
put links
next?
I am working on a story about the indigenous music of Canada.
Oh, nice.
So I'm interviewing First Nations.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me. First Nation musicians tomorrow morning.
Very cool.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I mean, there's really some incredible music coming out of there.
Yeah.
So
We've got a lot of Canadian listeners, so they'll
great.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's our second most popular country of listenership.
It's true.
Yes.
hello, Canada.
We love the
Got a
Canadians.
beautiful country. No, I've been going to Canada a little bit. I went to Vancouver Island, and then I was just in Ottawa for a story, and really nice people.
Ugh.
Yeah.
As nice as they
The
say
best.
they are.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, it's one of those things you're like, man, those people were so friendly. You're like, oh, they're Canadian.
Canadian. Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
true.
like a different baseline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like, are you friendly? Are you a friendly Canadian?
Right.
You know what I mean? So like in America, you're super friendly, but like in Canada, are you just normal? Or
Right.
like,
Yeah.
what goes on, you know?
So true.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Katie. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
making the journey to Venice, and it's lovely to meet you.
Such
and
a pleasure.
Yeah, we hope to see you again.
Yeah. This is cool.
Hey, folks, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please consider going to iTunes and leaving us a 5-star review and, write in a nice message there. Tell us what you think. Tell us what's going on for you out there. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Specifically, how awesome we are.
But we do love connecting, and it's nice to know there's folks out there listening, enjoying, and this is a great way to just stay in communication. So if you enjoy the podcast, you listen regularly, you're getting some benefit out of this, we would so love to see that 5-star review. And give us a shout out. We'd love to hear from you.
Summer